Donald Trump is one of the most famous politicians of the 21st century. For some, he is a symbol of strength and the fight against the system. For others, he is a president who too often turned politics into a show. But today, we are not going to argue about whether he is good or bad. We will look at 10 mistakes made by Donald Trump that had the strongest impact on his reputation, American politics, and the relationship between the United States and the rest of the world. And I recommend watching until the end. Because first place is not just a political scandal or a controversial decision, it is a story whose consequences may be felt for many years to come. 10th place, the constant war with facts and the media. Trump always knew how to attract attention with a single post or speech. He could take over the entire news agenda. That was his strength, but also his weakness. The problems began when his conflict with journalists turned into a conflict with almost everyone: experts, officials, courts, and even international partners. For his supporters, this looked like a fight against the system. For his critics, it looked like an attack on trust in institutions. When a president too often calls inconvenient information fake, people begin to lose the ability to understand where the facts end and political emotions begin. And without trust, even the right decisions start to be viewed with suspicion. Ninth place, trade wars and tariffs. Trump promised to protect American workers and bring manufacturing back to the United States. For many people, this sounded convincing, especially in regions where factories were closing and jobs were disappearing. But trade wars rarely come without consequences. Tariffs against China and other countries led to retaliatory measures. As a result, some businesses faced rising costs, farmers lost export markets, and consumers started paying more. The idea was understandable, to protect the economy. But the methods turned out to be too aggressive. Trump's mistake was that he often presented complex economic processes as a simple battle of us against them, even though the economy works in a much more complicated way. Eighth place, separating migrant families at the border. One of the most controversial decisions of the Trump administration was its tough immigration policy at the border with Mexico. The desire to control the border itself was not unusual. The problem was in the methods. The zero-tolerance policy led to children being separated from their parents. Even many supporters of strict border control considered this an excessive measure. This story seriously damaged Trump's image. Security began to be associated not with order, but with cruelty and chaos. Seventh place, withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement. When Trump announced that the United States would withdraw from the Paris Agreement, he spoke about protecting national interests. He argued that America was carrying too heavy a burden compared to other countries. However, on the international stage, it looked like a refusal to lead. For a long time, the United States had played a key role in shaping global rules. Leaving the agreement gave other countries an opportunity to fill the space that America had left behind. The mistake was not only in the decision itself, but also in the signal it sent to the world. Sixth place, personnel chaos. During Trump's presidency, his team was constantly changing. Secretaries, advisors, and agency heads regularly resigned or were fired. For his supporters, this looked like a fight against inefficiency. For his critics, it looked like a sign of instability. The problem is that a government system needs predictability. When key figures keep changing, allies begin to doubt, and opponents begin to look for weaknesses. At times, Trump's administration looked less like a stable team governing a country and more like a reality show. Fifth place, communication during COVID-19. The pandemic became a test for all world leaders. In moments like that, people need clarity and confidence. But the messages from the Trump administration often looked contradictory. On one side, there were recommendations from specialists. On the other, there were statements from the president himself, which did not always match the position of experts. When different sources say different things, society begins to split, and even health issues start to be viewed through the lens of politics. Trump did not create the pandemic, but many believe that he failed to become a unifying figure during the crisis. Fourth place, the Ukraine call and the first impeachment. One of the biggest scandals of Trump's first term was his conversation with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Trump's opponents accused him of using foreign policy for personal political gain. For his supporters, it was political persecution. For his critics, it was an abuse of power. The result was Trump's first impeachment. Although the Senate did not remove him from office, the reputational damage was serious. This story strengthened the image of Trump as a politician who too often mixed state interests with personal political battles. Third place, refusing to admit defeat in the 2020 election. After the 2020 election, Trump made the idea of a stolen election a central part of his rhetoric. His team tried to challenge the results through courts and various procedures. However, no large-scale evidence capable of changing the outcome of the election was presented. For democracy, this became a serious test. Accepting defeat is an important part of the political system. When millions of people begin to doubt the fairness of elections, trust in institutions starts to break down. That is why this story remains one of the most controversial chapters in Trump's political career. Second place, January 6, 2021. January 6th became one of the most dramatic days in modern American history. After a rally of Trump supporters, part of the crowd moved toward the Capitol, where the situation quickly got out of control. For critics, this became proof that Trump's rhetoric had gone too far. After these events, he received his second impeachment and became permanently linked to that date. The main mistake was that months of talk about a stolen election created an atmosphere whose consequences could no longer be fully controlled. A leader must not only inspire people, but also stop a crisis in time. And now, first place. The decision to launch an operation against Iran became one of Trump's riskiest bets. The operation was presented as a demonstration of strength and a way to eliminate threats from Iran. For Trump, this perfectly matched the image of a tough leader. But a military operation is not a loud statement or a political rally. When a superpower begins a campaign against a country like Iran, the consequences are difficult to calculate in advance. Iran has serious influence in the region, allies, and the ability to respond. The main question here is not whether the United States can launch a strike. The main question is what happens after that. If the conflict drags on, tensions in the region rise, oil prices increase, and the risks of a new escalation grow, then the initial success can turn into a strategic problem. This is no longer about ratings or political scandals. This is about war, international security, and consequences for an entire region. The biggest mistake was the hope that force could quickly be turned into full control over the situation. But the history of the Middle East has shown the opposite more than once. If we look at all these mistakes together, one pattern becomes clear. Trump almost always relied on pressure, conflict, and displays of strength. Sometimes this brought results. He knew how to attract attention, mobilize supporters, and change the political agenda. But his weakness was something else. He often confused attention with trust, loudness with effectiveness, and strength with control. That is why many of his decisions still cause such heated debates. Because the main question in politics is not only how to start a conflict, but also how to end it without destroying trust and stability around you.